Hello, amigos. Welcome to listening to me talk about a couple of things. Topic I'm going to go over salt again. I think this is important to convey. I've gone over quite a bit of info. First, I'll go over something that I've been thinking about. The most abundant thing that can be utilized, if you think about it and look up the information, is the salt or the minerals in the ocean. So, this is the most abundant thing that humans can be attracted to and take in. Because sugar is something that's got to be from something that's grown. Sugar is not something that's floating around in a mass area such as the ocean. So, to take the salt from the ocean, there's the extraction process. They have little puddles that they make, massive fields of little puddles. They basically dry out these puddles and then they rake up the salt or the minerals. And then they do things to those minerals and then they call them salt and then they put them on the shelves and then they put them in the food. And this is something I was wanting to talk about. If you go to the grocery store and you want to pick up some cheese that doesn't have any salt in it, well, according to information that I'm looking up, is that salt or the minerals have something to do with the cheese making process. I don't know about that entirely, because there is an actual white cheese that you can get that is zero salt. So how did they make that Swiss cheese without salt if salt is a part of the making of cheese? And cheese is one of the ways people can get calcium if they are needing a little bit of calcium. What's interesting is how humans inland, let's say that things were different, however, and they're inland humans, hundreds of miles away from the ocean, hundreds of miles away from Salt Lake. Let's say you didn't have any salt brought to you, and you had to eat off the land and not from the hand that feeds. Where are you going to get your salt? Do you have salt mines in your local area, in your township? Is there salt mines close by? First of all, what kind of minerals are you going to be mining over in certain areas? There's some mines of some minerals that you can get. You're going to be at the mercy of no salt. And humans far away from any kind of salt survive. Certain people that come to mind are so-called Eskimos up in very cold areas. And they will feed off of a lot of fat, and they eat raw. Generally, they don't really cook a whole lot. So if they kill a walrus, or if they kill a seal, or something else washes up and it's fresh enough that they can eat it, they can go directly to it. They can take pieces off of it and eat it right there. They might collect some of it. They might do a lot of blood drinking. They might during the warmer seasons, they might be able to grab a little bit of vegetation, some of it. Still, there's no salt. There's no corner store to pick up their cigarettes and their and their salt and their salt-laden products or any of that. So it's interesting to me that from birth to death, there's salt. A person in a senior home is at the mercy of what's being fed to them, and what's being fed to them is processed. What's very similar to children being fed at their schools. The school feeds them, or their parents make them a lunch, and that lunch is filled with processed things. Bread has salt in it, white bread, so that way they can have their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Some chips they put in there, salt on it. Maybe some Lunchables or whatever, salt on it. Their drinks, salt in it, sometimes, usually. You want to get some milk. You want to get salt-free milk. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get salt-free milk. So right there, you're taking in salt. You're taking in a lot of potassium. You're taking in a lot of salt. And to go over, again, my previous salt video that I did about 2 or 3 back, I was going over it. The composition. There's all kinds of minerals inside of salt. The most abundant minerals is going to be sodium, potassium, and chloride. And if you look real deep, you will know that chloride is a lot of times the most abundant thing inside of salt. I'm not going to go into that. I'd say that's the most important thing of anything that I'll talk about, probably in any of my videos ever, is that one thing to keep in mind. Chloride. So moving along from there, you have all of your birth to death situation I'm talking about here. That's what I'm talking about. You have a little baby, for whatever reason, and my mother, I know this because I actually remember. A lot of people, they at my age or even younger than I am, do not remember when they were 1. I remember my mother putting Gerber into my mouth, and I remember her stirring it with the little tiny baby spoon. And she would stir it and stir it and stir it, and she would stir it for quite a while in a really weird way. And she fed it to me, and I remember the peas and the orange one that she would feed me quite a bit. She fed me a lot of peas, and she fed me a lot of whatever, squash, orange, carrots, whatever. Well, if you look at the ingredients on the Gerbers, there's additives. There's salt, there's additives. It might not be as much. It's still in there. My nephew, who had a kid, we were looking at, he said that he was feeding the baby formulas. I said, why the hell are you feeding your baby formulas, man? And something's the matter with the mother, where she's not producing enough milk, or something's the matter there. So they give the baby formula. And the baby basically went the whole way on formula. And we were looking at the ingredients inside of it. And one of the ingredients is actual sugar. They put actual sucrose sugar inside of the baby's milk. And there's no sugar inside of a mother's milk that comes out as zero sucrose inside of a mother's milk. And correct me if I'm full of shit on that. If you look into it, correct me. Pretty sure of that. So you have that little baby who's getting the salt from the Gerber, from the formulas, and then the little children, they're going to eat kid food. Everything that's proposed as a kid food commercially. So kid foods is everything that is told to you that that's a kid food. And kid vitamins, kid snacks. Something that comes to mind is the fish, those little fish crackers, the cheddar fish crackers. The name of the goldfish, that's what they're called. Christ. So all of these things that these are proposed as little kid food, candy, blah blah blah. That's separate though from things that are enriched with salt. And then, a lot of parents are probably going to say, oh, well, I will never feed my child anything that would hurt them, or I always look for the best. Well, you're at the mercy of what's on those shelves. I mean, you're not going out and cutting chicken heads off and cooking fresh breasts or slaughtering cattle or any of these things for your children. You hop in your car, you head down to your local grocery store, if they're not on strike. You go on inside there, you walk down the aisles, and you're at the mercy of what's being fed to you, the hand that feeds. So moving along, move on up in life. You're a teenager, you're maybe in high school or you're in junior high. I remember vividly eating Pizza Hut at junior high. And I remember that it was a big thing that we no longer had the pizza that the cafeteria made. It was a big thing that they had huge boxes that they brought in, or a big stack of the pizzas. And all the kids went nuts over that. And I basically ate pizza every damn day in high school whenever I had little punch holes available to me, so that way I could have it, or I had a couple bucks on me or whatever. And that was a good thing. And it's not a good thing. Pizza Hut is garbage. Then, up into high school, I only sat in the cafeteria line ever so I could get a couple of cookies before a certain class in the morning, or maybe a drink. I always wanted some cookies for some reason. And every once in a while, maybe some kind of food thing. Other than that, all of us hopped in our cars that we had at the time, and we went over to Burger King, or we went over to McDonald's or whatever. And this is just shit food. And this is where you're at the mercy of what's available to you, unless you packed a lunch, which is still is the same food. It's still packed full of salt. It's still packed full of whatever. Well, you're more resilient at these ages. And I noticed for myself, from all the different bodybuilding and diets and nutrition and everything, and doing keto and doing everything, and really bringing my salt up quite a bit. As an adult, so we'll talk about adult age now, mid adult, 30s, 40s. I started noticing issues with my body. I started noticing issues with the side of my stomach was starting to bother me. And I was taking in a lot of salt. And there's a bodybuilder video that comes to mind. His name is Milos. Shit. I don't remember his last name. His first name is Milos. He has more of a Greek symmetry, beautiful type thing going on. He's not really a big, huge, gigantic bodybuilder. He's still very muscular. Sarchev, Milos Sarchev. He was some random video I was watching where he was at his mom's in Europe, wherever she's at, Siberia, I think it was. And he was going over all the foods that he was talking about. He always has been eating basically for the last 40 years or whatever for breakfast. And he was talking about horse meat, which is odd for U.S. because we don't eat horse meat. He was talking about things that he was showing it, and they looked real clean, and they didn't have anything put on them. It was just straight food. And he had straight bread, and he had a little bit of butter that he was putting on it, and it would look pretty good, and everything looked really good. And he was going to town with the salt. And it's interesting, the location that his mom was at in Siberia or whatever. What's her source for her salt that she's getting? Because they all looked real healthy. And it's very strange to me. And he was putting a lot of it on his food. And he looks like a pretty healthy guy. And I'm wondering to myself if he's getting salt from a certain area, or if it's the same salt and his body can hack it. If you've ever been walking through the grocery store and you look at everyone's not looking too healthy. I'll be walking through local health store and they don't look healthy at all. I mean, everywhere I go, everyone looks not so healthy. And I notice people lately are dying because of a bunch of stuff that's been happening. And I look at the bodybuilding community, and it seems every week there's someone dying lately. For the last couple of years. Every week someone's freaking dying. It's so-and-so dies. And the ages are getting younger and younger. And there's a lot of bodybuilders that were retired from Arnold Schwarzenegger's era that are passing away in their 70s and in their 80s, which is not uncommon for people to pass away when they're older. It's understandable. So there's something that I know about bodybuilding is that you pound a lot of food, you eat a lot of food. And I know that bodybuilders, one of the only things that's a brain food or a stimulation to a dull diet is putting a barbecue sauce on it, putting soy sauce on it, and whatever. And one bodybuilder that actually took himself out, I don't remember his name right off the bat. He was in UK, and this was about 2 years ago. And I was watching a video that was shot before he ended his life, and he was just putting soy sauce on all of his little dishes that he had. He was putting tons of it on there. And soy sauce has an enormous amount of salt in it. And I saw some videos of him a little bit around that time, and he looked very depressed. He was disassociating. One bodybuilder was going on about something in some interview, and he just turned to him and said, "I don't even know what the fuck you've been talking about." He was disassociated. He was going through depression. Well, he ended his life, and that's some things that I've taken in. My point is, though, I think that the reason that bodybuilders have been dying so much, so fast, is from changes that have been made to our food, changes that have been made to our salt that we're used to taking in. If it's changed and it's still called salt, it might be the reason that a lot of people have been dying lately. Now, say genetically your body is not doing well with these minerals in a certain composition or a certain abundance, along with other things that you're taking in. So it's possibly hindering your ability to think, sleep, to maintain certain moods, uplifting, good moods. Got to think about how the blood flow in the brain is very small, very small. So if there's any kind of issues with your blood vessels, or if you're in the brain capillaries, it's very, very, very small amounts of blood moving through your brain. So certain things such as this beer that I'm drinking right now, this is a vasodilator. This is going to expand somewhat my blood flow, the veins inside of my body. And certain things are going to constrict, such as the coffee, the caffeine, the vasoconstrictor. So it's going to tighten all the little teeny capillaries, the little small veins inside your body, your fingers, your toes, your sexual organs, your eyes, your close to touch, your skin, your feeling, things you can feel. So that's going to have something to do with that. So the more salt you're taking in, the more vasoconstriction, caffeine, rock stars, Red Bulls, chocolate, caffeine, and theobromine, and all kinds of other. There's 5 stimulants in chocolate, so keep that in mind. It's a super duper stimulant. Chocolate is. And methamphetamine and cocaine. For anyone that's using cocaine or methamphetamine, so that way they can get by. And I think this is a point that one of the main reasons that we use so much stimulants is as a diuretic for the brain, so we can think, so we can move. How many times have you heard people in the morning saying, "There's absolutely nothing I'll do until I have my coffee," or "I've attempted to stop drinking coffee and there's no way." As soon as you go to sleep, your body is going to go into it's going to slow down. Everything's slowing down. And eating before bed is never good. Well, why is that? For one, a lot of times it has something to do with how your acid reflux, or something to do with upset stomach, or something to do with maybe what I'm talking about. Just took in too much salt during the day and you loaded up before you went to bed. So look at those condiments that you're putting into your food. Even this beer I'm holding in my hand has salt in it. This is the most salt I'll have all day is these beers. Personally, I'm going to take the salt out, and just not shaking the salt or grinding the salt on my food and eliminating that is not enough. It's self-evident. It's not enough. I've got to actually, I made my own bread that has no salt in it. It came out all right. I also want to lower my yeast intake because of the beers I drink. I don't want to take in a lot of yeast, so I don't really want a whole lot of that bread because I put yeast in it, so it would actually be bread. I've reduced. I had it to the point where I was, and I think this is my own specific body. I think other people can handle salt better than I can. I think I have a genetic issue with it. As far as my whole body, my intestines, my muscles, my brain, everything, my kidneys, my liver. I was putting maybe, for the full day, I was maybe putting less than a tablespoon of red hot wing sauce on top of my meats that I was cooking, or on top of some of my food. And I was using a little tiny bit of lemon pepper that has salt in it. Some special, awesome lemon pepper. And that was basically all I was using. And then I said, all right, well, I'm going to put a little bit of tamari soy sauce on my rice. And then I started having more issues with my stomach, with my freaking depression and everything else, which is always still there. It varies, though, with what I take in. And this is important. This is something that you got to keep in mind. So I'm talking bear-based foods I've been making and eating and cleaning the pots and cleaning the pans and cleaning the dishes. And it's up and beyond just taking a Swanson's TV dinner and just hucking it in the microwave, or making some top ramen, putting the seasoning in there. Delicious, I'm on with my day. Those things are quick. Stopping at McDonald's and getting a drive-through, very caloric, get you going through the day meal is very tempting. I know. It's because it's easier. It's easier to do. You can do more things with your day. Well, how good is any of that if your health is going to shit, or your mental health is going to shit? This is a lot of my point. What good is it? What good is all that time and all the awesome things in life if it's not awesome, if your body's not functioning for you? So I'll wash those dishes over and over and over again, so that way I can get a little more going on with my body here, get a little bit more going on with my brain, because I already know where I'm at with my brain anyways, from being born with the brain that I have. That's Leon. Okay, Leon. He's got something to say too. You agree? Well, the birds and all of the food, and Leon is 6. He's a parakeet. And Sasha, the female, she's a parakeet. She's probably going to be 6 here, but right now. And then Napoleon, he's the conure. He's 6. And they don't eat salt. 0. And they're alive. They have 0 salt feed. They have 0 salt vegetables and a little bit of fruit. And they are sitting here right now, and they have not had any salt there basically their entire lives, other than little treats that I've given Napoleon. And even then, I've cut that out. He loves, I don't want to say the word, FRENCHFRIES. He loves those. Well, those have a lot of salt on them, so I took those out. I got one potato I'm going to cut up, and I'm going to make some zero salt French fries with a russet. One russet potato with a little bit of olive oil on it. I've done that before, and it comes out okay. Interesting thing is, at the health food store, there's a zero sodium salt, and this is a 0.2, and this is 100% potassium chloride, and that's 100% the problem. That's 100% what's giving people heart attacks and all that. You'll have to look deeper into that. And here is the actual thing that you can purchase. So someone who has a heart condition, you say, "Oh, well, John's not gonna eat sodium because sodium's bad for him." Well, you have to look at that again. And you have to look at it under the microscope. You have to look at it and realize or understand that that's what I'm talking about, how it's the composition of the salt is being changed to where they can actually sell you the main thing inside of this that's fucking you up. And I'd like to also point out that the lethal injection that they put inside of people is potassium chloride. So take that with you. It's actually potassium chloride. And if you look up on Google, if I take a lot of salt, will it kill me? I'm talking about in one sitting. So if you've taken a bunch of salt, it'll stop your heart. Why? Why is that? Why will it stop your heart? What's in connection with what's injected into you to actually stop your heart? And in some people, this is factual, in some people in the lethal injection, they'll give the lethal injection and they'll not pass away, they will stay alive. So then they've got to do something else. They've got to do it again or whatever, and then they will go. Some people will go faster, some people it won't even take. So that's the difference in the bodies. That's why my brain that I'm born with has an effect from certain elements and certain nutrients and molecular structures vastly from other people that can eat Jimmy Dean sausage all the way up until they're 100. You know, some people can smoke, some people can chew and not get mouth cancer, and some people can drink alcohol abundantly up until they're 80 and live on, and some people will pass away from drinking the same way before they're 50. It's interesting how the body is resilient to certain things genetically. And anyone that wants to argue with me on that is an asshole, because you got to look in a little bit further. You got to look in at the differentiation of different races. You got to look at your lineage. You got to look at your grandparents, how they do with this, how did mom and dad do with this. If you are in a family, maybe you were adopted, you don't even know. You don't know what mom and dad were. You don't know how mom and dad reacted to anything. So you don't have that to go by. So maybe some of the information I have will help you. And I like to think that some of my information that I have will help you without knowing what your mom and dad or your grandparents were. I only have, not really only, it's still quite a bit. I've got maybe 2 generations of knowing somewhat of what's happened with my family. Even my sister was bringing something up about my grandmother that I never even knew about. Just some electroshock therapy for her depression. I didn't ever know about that. Nobody ever said anything to me about that. Of course, they didn't want to say anything to me about that. They don't want me. My own family doesn't really want me to know truth. My own family doesn't want to admit. So yeah, genetics, all that has a lot to do with how you can handle a lot of these things that are thrown at you in life. I don't think it's far off to say that salt is number one, the most abundant thing that's fucking people up. What's that saying? Bar none. There's no doubt. I've gone over quite a bit about sugar, fructose, and the liver, and even thinking about 30 bananas a day. There's a couple that does that. I don't remember their names. And they were enlightened by that. And I think about that, and if you're taking in all that fruit, you're not taking in the salt. If you're not taking in the salt, then you're going to have that vibrance that I'm talking about. You're going to have more to your life by not taking this in. I don't know how they're doing now. I do know that eating a lot of sugar is going to be rough on your liver because of the fructose. The fructose is going to convert to saturated fat inside of your liver, and you're going to get fatty liver from taking in too much fruit. Looking at all the different macronutrients, micronutrients, it makes sense that that's not something that you can go on long term with. For anyone that's considering the all fruit diet, that's not to say that it's not something you should do or you should do. Say, check the facts. Check the facts on the fact that the liver and the triglycerides from all that sugar and carbohydrate, it's just not going to happen, man. There's got to be certain reasons for everything, of course. There's got to be certain reasons why. More spectacular things, such as I'm saying, there's no sodium, or excuse me, salt, not sodium. Doctors will say, reduce your sodium. Doctors need to say, reduce your salt. Some doctors do say that, reduce your salt. If they're saying reduce your sodium, that's misleading. If you are only, what are you going to do? Reduce your sodium. How are you going to reduce your sodium? You got to reduce your salt. Is a doctor going to say to you, reduce your chloride? I don't think so. And hospitals are a business. There's a board. There's a corporation. There's putting things together. There's buildings popping up everywhere. It's basically a McDonald's. I'm happy if any of this information is viable to your life. And maybe there's some dots that you could put together where you could say, yes, that has something to do with me, or Uncle Joe, or my mom, or my dad. Now, I tell my parents all the time, lower your salt. And it's probably it's a nagging type thing. Just shut the hell up about your salt thing. No. I'm not going to. I'll stand by that because I know through facts, through intuition, looking, affirmations, self-evident things, looking at my parents and their bodies and what they eat, and my father saying, how do I get more energy? How do I get more energy? How's your body going to get more energy if your cells are not functioning properly? That is a good point. If you have no energy, and this is beyond mental health, this is your whole entire body. If you have no energy, how are you going to have energy if all of your cells are hindered by something that's messing with the pumping mechanism, or the junk that's inside of your cells, that's inside of salt, fucking up everything else that has to do with your living existence, your living being. Think of a root system all the way up to the very top of a tree or a plant, and think about all the leaves, and think about all the berries and the fruits and the oranges and apples that come off these trees. Think about all the way at the very bottom of the root. It's what that tree is taking in is what is going to be what that tree will provide, what that tree will do. And I could say to my dad, hey, take salt out. Well, salt is so abundant in culture and commercialism, and even a lot of health people will say salt is good for you. You look that up right now. Look up YouTube videos. Look up where people are talking about how salt is good for you. It's getting spread around quite a bit. Rhetoric, dogma, culture. Well, if you're not positive for a moment, and you're not mainstream, and you're looking outside, or maybe looking within certain areas where you can look through information that clicks with other things that you've been putting together, and then it makes sense towards your self-evident situation with things in your family, things with yourself, health type things where you could say, all right, this. Why? Everything's a question. How is this going to do me any good? How is this going to do me any good? How is this going to do my friends any good? A lot of it's possibly going to be a psychological matter. A lot of it's going to be, to think about my dad, a lot of it's going to be a little bit a backlashing type situation. Because the truth is not really something that people want anything to do with. Because we're all gonna die, and you can complain until your face turns blue. You can go around town saying that demons did it to you, or you didn't pray enough, and it's not going to change the facts. It's not going to change looking further in that's the actual truth. It's not going to change that. I mean, you can expend yourself forever on rhetoric. You can expend yourself on mysticism. You can expend yourself on shutting off. You can completely turn off and say that you just want to watch the bunny videos all day, or memes. Hide away from the truth. Hide away from things that are going to, in a way, psychologically just fuck you up, in a way. Yeah. If you can get over that, And you can get on top of a plane, or you can get to that top of that peak, and you can look all around. You could say to yourself, now it makes sense. And then it's behind you. It wasn't really a thing after all. It wasn't a maybe maybe the mind is letting you know who you are all the time. And all you have in life is that conscious part of your brain. All you have is that portion of your brain. That's the consciousness. And the subconscious is always letting you know what you are, who you are, how you're going to be, and everything else. You've got to contend with that until you're gone. And if you're contending with that, or if you're saying, okay, the consciousness is what I am, and the subconscious is what they are, then differentiating which one is which throughout life will possibly get you to where you're more of a entity. You're much more than an identity. You actually have turned into something. You've actually become something. Salt's a poison. So I realize it. If you get to the point where you realize it, then you can hop on to your own affirmation. You can get on to your own realization, and then you're always welcome to share what you think. Any questions, any concerns that you have about anything that I've been talking about, or other things. Think about some of this stuff. I give my heart. I give my love. I give what I can. And it makes me feel better about being alive. And that's my testimony.